Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Plans Committee on Thursday, the 16th of October 2025 for Charnwood Borough Council. Please could I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent to ensure that the meeting is distraction-free. May I remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you are giving your consent to be filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it and can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for the 16th of October 2025. Could I ask that members of the committee use their microphones every time they speak to ensure that viewers of the live stream and the recording can hear the discussion? Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute of time is remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, Ms. Dobson. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Lenny, Chair of the Plans Committee. Other members joining us on the Plans Committee this evening are Councillor Corey Losley, who is my Vice Chair, Councillor Baines, Councillor Boker, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Infield, Councillor Lowe, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Snart and Councillor Taylor-Durant. The Planning Officer this evening is Mr. Upton, and our lead officer for the evening is Ms. Tate. Our Democratic Services Officer is Ms. Dobson. I would also like to welcome Mr. Evans, our legal advisor for the evening. The first item on the agenda is apologies. Ms. Dobson, have we received any apologies?
We've received an apology from Councillor Smidowitz and Councillor Baines will be substitute. We've also received apologies from Councillor Monk and Councillor Lowe will be substitute. And we've had an apology from Councillor Matthews and Councillor Boker will be substitute.
Thank you. And thank you for our substitute councillors who are helping to make up the full committee tonight. Item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Is the committee happy to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of September 2025? And could you please show your hands if you are? I'm assuming, 1, 2, 3, 6, isn't it? Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as a correct record and I will sign them at the end of this meeting. Get my hammer out of the way. Item 3 on the agenda is questions under Committee Procedure 12.8. Ms. Dobson, have we received any questions?
I confirm no questions have been received.
Thank you. Item 4 is disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Ms. Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interest?
We're aware that a resident's petition and letter has been sent to various committee members directly on behalf of the University Development Concerned Residents Group. So if it's okay with you, Chair, please could I ask for a show of hands of all those members that have received this email and letter?
Okay,
I'll just need to take the names. So Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Infield, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Snart, and Councillor Taylor-Durant, Councillor Corey Lowesley and Councillor Lenny. And could you all just, could I have a show of hands for all those that still come to the meeting with an open mind, please? I think that's everybody, isn't it? Yes, thank you.
Are there any other disclosures of interest that members wish to make? No. Thank you. So now we're approaching item 5, which is the planning applications. Item 5A, number P/25/1299/2, Loughborough University, Ashby Road, Loughborough. I would like to refer to our planning officer, Mr. Upton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just awaiting the technology, I think.
Is that one?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I think it's worthwhile waiting just to get the screens back up, Chair, if that's okay.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. While we're waiting, would it be worthwhile just reiterating all the extra meetings and Zoom meetings that we have, because a lot have been added in the past couple of weeks? Thank you.
Do you mean planning meetings?
Chair, if you allow me to speak. So we've got, obviously tonight, we've got Tuesday the 28th of October, Thursday the 13th of November, Tuesday the 25th of November, and then Thursday the 18th of December coming up.
Thank you, Ms. Dobson.
Thank you. I'll add all those to my calendar.
Thank you, Chair, members. Yeah, apologies. I think I might be excused putting any illuminations up this year. Yeah, Chair, members, we're here this evening to consider an application for 5 blocks of student accommodation up at the Loughborough University campus, as set out on the title slide. Encompasses 552 bed spaces, warden's accommodation, associated amenity space, provision of access service and infrastructure, and associated landscaping. So the scheme would consist of 5 accommodation blocks. So just to give a broad location, you see the red lozenge on the to the west of or northwest of Margaret Key Road. The site is outlined in the red line with the blue notation on this plan clearly showing the other land and buildings owned by the applicant. There was a site visit this afternoon and just annotated in sort of yellowy orange colour there are 3 properties which we were kindly allowed access to show members both from within the site, views from within the site, as well as from neighbouring residential properties. The scheme has various design objectives, and I'm sure they will be fairly well known through the documentation. But the stated aims are clearly to try and provide a high quality purpose-built and managed student accommodation with appropriate facilities. As we'll see as we go through the scheme, it's contemporary design and seeking to enhance this part of the campus and has an associated landscape setting and a central pedestrian avenue, and we'll get to that as we go through the slides. So in terms of the Warden flats, they would be within 3 of the blocks proposed. We'll get to the plans shortly, but they'll be in blocks 2, 3 and 4, and the Wardens would oversee the management of the accommodation, seeking to prevent some of the issues that have been raised through consultation on the application in terms of noise disturbance, potential for antisocial behaviour and similar issues. As we go through the slides, I'll just reference the block numbering because on the submitted plans they are numbered in a sequence of 1 to 5, but they're preceded by 7, 6. So the plan references or block references are 761, 762, 763, 764 and 765. And for ease of reference, I will point those out when we go through the slides. I'll run through them in a moment in terms of the slides, but I want to bring members' attention to the extras report and walk through that so we can see some of the key planning issues and some of the late items that have been addressed. Yes, sorry, Chair. Okay. Yeah, I get a bit close to the microphone as well. Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the extras report, items 1, 2 and 6 relate to further representations that have been received. That includes a petition of just over 300 signatures raising concerns relating to the proposals. As members will be aware, the attribution of weight that can be given to a particular material planning consideration, whether it be raised by an individual or several hundred, either for or against a proposal, is the same in the planning weight that we attach to those material considerations. In response to issue 6, regarding the petition, all issues raised are considered to be addressed appropriately in the consideration of the application, and there is no change to the recommendation. With regard to issue 3, there's an update on ecological and biodiversity issues. The biodiversity officer has set out 2 options for the applicant to address the concerns resulting from the need to provide biodiversity net gain as part of the proposals. 2 options as set out in the extras report have been offered to address that mitigation required, and in this case the applicant has confirmed that they will address the issue of off-site mitigation through the purchase of credits from an appropriate habitat bank. Bring members' attention to the fact that that's a post-decision matter that will be controlled by the imposition of a statutory biodiversity gain condition on any permission, should that be granted this evening. With regard to issue 4 on planning conditions, there are relevant updates listed from the conditions in the published report. These include the biodiversity updates mentioned by the biodiversity officer, which results in an additional condition and an informative notes. The additional condition secures the approval of details for ecological enhancements as outlined in the submitted ecological assessment, including hedgehog boxes, open-fronted bird nest boxes, cavity and crevice dwelling bat boxes, amongst other features listed. The additional informative note recommends the developer do a walkover survey should badgers be encountered on the site. At present, there are no badger sets in the vicinity of any buildings, but it is proposed that they be. It is proposed as the site progresses that there is a walkover survey via an informative. It would not be reasonable to add this as a conditional requirement, as the badgers were only recorded in the vicinity of the development site. With regard to issue 5, update on contributions, there has been, as set out in the papers, further request for update from the Highway Authority, and the receipt of an update was literally only very recently this afternoon. This response has cast some doubt as to the veracity and SIL compliance of the request for contributions from the Highway Authority. And so it's doubted at this current time by officers that they will ultimately be SIL compliant, but that does require further discussion. Therefore, should members be happy generally to support the officer recommendation regarding the development, the recommendation this evening is suggested to be updated so that permission will be granted, subject to the conditions set out in the published and extras report, and that the consideration of the further feedback from the Highway Authority be delegated to officers to confirm whether the requested contributions are SIL compliant, and to do that in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the committee. There is an additional point that has been picked up in preparing for the meeting this evening, and that is paragraph 5.5 of the published report regarding the Environment Act 2021, where the final sentence isn't relevant to the proposal this evening, and that sentence begins, however, as this proposal is an application for reserved matters, that is included in error and should be ignored in our deliberations. Clearly, we're considering a full application for development, and it is, as I set out earlier in the update, within the scope of the mandatory biodiversity net gain legislation. So in terms of turning to the slides, members, majority of members will have orientated themselves today from the site visit. So this slide just shows the general location of the site and its surrounding area. So on the south side of the site is Holywell Drive and the top of Fairmount Drive. On the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see Spinney Hill Drive and the properties there. And to the north of the site is the Garden of Remembrance and the walled garden and Gardener's Cottage. In terms of the middle of the site, we'll see reference to the Graham Oldham building and the chemistry building. I mentioned both of those buildings because we'll see in photographs shortly that both of those buildings have been demolished. And it's just to note really the scale of the chemistry building, which is was a 5-storey building. In terms of the other features around the site, this shows again in red the application site, so car parking and landscaped areas around the periphery, and the blue etched and shaded site is other land and buildings controlled by the applicant. In terms of views, the key plan there shows internal views in terms of the site context. So you can see in the bottom slide, in slide 2 there, the chemistry building at the far end of the site, and other views across car parking areas. Again, members' attention drawn to the fact that this was prior to the top 2 slides are prior to the Graham Oldham building and the chemistry block being demolished, and the bottom slide shows the current view on site today. In terms of the topography of the site and the general levels, this slide shows the general fall of the site from west to east. So if we look at heights on the left-hand side, the western side of the site, we're around approaching 69 metres and just over, and up in the on the right-hand side in the northeastern corner, we're going down to around the 60 to 61 metre height, and the far extremity goes down to 58. In terms of the site layout, effectively this is the block numbering the first time we see it on this slide. So 761, 762 have proposed 4-storey blocks of accommodation, and 763, 764 and 765 are 6-storey blocks. You'll see through the middle of the site it is to be a car-free development, and through the middle of the site are landscaped areas and a central spine which provides pedestrian access. There's also where it talks about pedestrian access, there is proposed to be a very heavily landscaped feature, and opportunities to move through the site for pedestrians. In terms of features to the north of the site, just point out there we have got the Remembrance Garden, which is notated as one in the north of the site, and the significant tree belts around the site as well. You'll see to the south of the site, again, buildings owned and controlled by the applicant.
Excuse me, residents and people who obviously have come to say their piece. You have 2 representatives for your views this evening, and if we could please have some silence while the officer is going through the details that the members need to know about to make their decisions, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you for letting me know.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Is that better? I'll do a bit better. Okay, so effectively, the principle of development. So the application clearly gives rise to a wide range of issues, and it is a full application with a basket of policies which are set out for consideration this evening in the report and the update. The proposal is in accordance with the safe policies of the 2004 local plan and with CS1 of the core strategy, and lies both within the campus and proposes purpose-built student accommodation within the limits of development of Loughborough. Policies D1 and H8 the emerging local plan, for the reasons set out, are appropriate, and as referenced in the extras report, policy CF/4 entitled Loughborough University and College Campuses is a safe policy from the 2004 local plan. For ease of reference, the full provisions of that policy are set out in the extras report for members. Emerging policy H8, campus and purpose-built student accommodation, confirms that additional student housing provision within the campuses of Loughborough University and the college will be supported. It's appreciated and acknowledged that the site, the nature of the site, will experience a change from its current site as an open car park predominantly, and the taller buildings will be visible from different vantage points. However, and I'll go into the design in a bit more detail, the scheme is compliant with relevant policies. In terms of going through the slides, this is an aerial view which shows the different areas mentioned. You'll see linking the blocks. We have got the central spine going through the site, and the Remembrance Garden that I mentioned earlier is set out. The Edward Herbert building, again, is to the north of the site, and there is an existing project of improvement to the DigiLabs on the north side of the site. To show what was referenced earlier in terms of the levels across the site, there are two sample cross sections here which show the 4-storey blocks on the western side of the site and the change in levels going down to the proposed 6-storey blocks further through the site. And there's a reverse section showing more or less a reverse view with 762 on the bottom run of buildings on the bottom right hand side of that slide. So that would be the inward face of the buildings onto that central area. Again, some impressions of the building. So as we said at the start, it is a contemporary approach to design, and it would be a mix of materials, and further details would be required by condition to ensure that the appropriate mixed materials is there. And there's a materials palette. So there would be both two proposed types of brick in terms of facing brick. A lot of the window openings would be recessed. There would be some louvred panels on a lot of the window openings, and there'd also be some cladding on the building. So a good and healthy mix of materials in design terms. In terms of landscaping, clearly there is a significant tree stock on the site. So this slide shows the existing landscaping and that to be retained in green, and then in red the trees to be removed. Clearly those areas will be impacted in terms of the red areas where the buildings primarily are located, and this is a more detailed tree retention plan. So you can see in black the areas of retention, and then in red some of the all of the areas that are proposed to be removed. In terms of proposed landscaping, this again shows what the proposal encompasses. So we've got the outline of the buildings there, and on the legend on the right hand side of this slide is proposed trees, so the circles with the dot in. So you can see schematically and overall where it's proposed new planting. So the southern southwest corner, the northwest corner, so the south side and west side of block 762, the north side and around other elevations on block 761, and then further planting within that central amenity area and adjacent to 763, and then further plantings around 764 and 765. So that hopefully gives members a proper feel for that. In terms of the subject of biodiversity net gain, the proposal does meet the requirements of emerging policy EV6 and EV7, seeking to conserve, restore and enhance the natural environment in line with the provisions of the National Planning Policy Framework. Similarly, the site's limited wildlife can adequately be safeguarded, and there is the additional condition in the extras report as referenced earlier. In terms of the tree retention and soft landscaping plans, as can be seen in the slide pack, these show the vast majority of trees are retained, and the tree officer has confirmed that given the large number of trees present and retained, and the understanding that the applicant is a good estate manager, no significant adverse impacts to the local tree resource or amenities anticipated in the medium to long term. With regard to heritage, there are two notable features on the site, and hopefully the photographs that I'll show now explain that for members. So there are two principal assets in the locality. So Gardener's Cottage, so in the top left-hand slide, there is an amenity area between the other asset, which is the walled garden, and members will have seen that on site today when we went around various vantage points on the site. And top right is obviously some cycling facilities near the cottage, and it's also viewed across the car park. That car parking area is just outside the application site, and we are looking northwest there along the car park, and it shows obviously other facilities, buildings within the campus. And similarly in the bottom right, it does adjoin on that elevation the service yard, which in the left-hand shot is behind the boarded fence. In terms of heritage, that has been assessed, and the setting of the heritage assets will be altered, but in a neutral manner from their already compromised state, so as not to affect their significance. The Conservation Officer feedback is set out in full in the published report, and concludes that heritage significance and setting of both Gardener's Cottage and the walled garden, which I'll show members now, would not be harmed by the proposed development, and as such would satisfy the duty under the Act and the above mentioned policies. So we see here on the right hand side the walled garden, and from the other angle we see it on the bottom. From the open side, the Heras fencing is no longer there, and that is the open side of the walled garden, where you can see the buildings beyond, in terms of the modern buildings, which, as the Conservation Officer has said, give a certain compromised position to the open setting that historically would have been there for those assets. And that further illustrates the point with regard to the Bridgeman building to the north of the walled garden, and then looking further north and east towards the other university buildings that are present. And I've just put that slide in there so members can appreciate the cross-section of the 4-storey buildings. This one is block 762. So a fairly regular pattern of bedrooms with a central corridor, and there will be some panels on the roof of each building, and the parapet wall protecting those visually. In terms of residential amenity, there's clearly very significant concerns being raised with regard to residential amenity, and I'm grateful for the access afforded in looking at the site, not only today by local residents, but also in advance of the meeting today. In terms of the impacts on amenity, it's concerned with both the buildings themselves and the activities associated with them. However, upon detailed analysis, it is concluded that levels of amenity for nearby occupiers will remain of an appropriate standard in planning terms. I'll point out some of the issues as we go through. So on this slide, I've tried to replicate for members the visits that were undertaken today in terms of the 3 properties that were accessed, so people can appreciate the views from those properties. But in general terms, the trees to the rear of 5 to 13 Spinney Drive, which is on the left-hand side of this slide, so you can see where Spinney Drive is referenced there in the white typeface. So the buildings there, including those with the trees, including those used by the allotment society, are shown to be retained by the positioning of block 761, which is approximately aligned with the extent of the car park surface at present. So if we look at this block I'm showing there, we've got the Lags allotment there, and where the car parking is, the first rank of car parking is roughly where the first block will be located. In terms of the consideration assessment there, it's considered that that separation will be appropriate and prevent block 761 appearing overly prominent in views from the west. And it's significant that the proposed 4-storey block with a flat roof has an effective height of approximately 14 metres if features on the roof are included, approximately a storey higher than the houses on Spinney Drive. The houses themselves will provide screening, and the trees considerably higher than the houses at approximately 16 metres high, generally for the canopy, will provide a strong degree of screening to the proposed development, filtering views and softening the impact of the block and preventing it to become visually intrusive or a dominant feature. And I'll show you the pictures of that area now. So 15 Spinney Drive. So we've got the access point, and behind the trees is number 15 Spinney Drive as the first property. And we've got pictures from that property there, and there is some significant screening to the rear amenity space, and that's not proposed to be altered by these proposals. In terms of 9 Spinney Drive, clearly there's a separation there. I've included photographs to the left-hand side of the slide of photographs from the first floor windows of the property. They include a slide in the top left-hand corner that shows the winter conditions, which has kindly been provided for the presentation this evening. And on the right-hand side of that slide is that tree canopy in full leaf that's over a ground floor extension that's been recently erected, plus the bottom left-hand slide just shows another photograph. You'll notice from the lanterns, it's slightly across onto another window opening that photograph's been taken from, to give you an impression of the tree canopy from that first floor level. In terms of the ground floor, again, the right-hand side, the other side of the green line that comes down the middle of the slide, shows the ground floor impact. So we've got the full tree canopy and the garden area. I'll talk about separation shortly when we get the relevant slide. In terms of 15 Holywell Drive, so this is the southernmost property on those 3 that are highlighted on the entry slide with the yellowy orange notation. We can see there the existing amenity area. There is a patio and extensive area at the side and rear of the house, and the photograph on the right hand side shows a view from that patio area. In terms of points of interest, clearly, as we saw earlier with the landscaping proposal, it's not proposed to take any significant trees out of this area, and it is proposed as part of the landscaping proposals, which are conditioned, to actually supplement planting in that area. In terms of the bottom of the slide, these are shots further up the garden. So as you can see and appreciate, as you go further up the garden, there will be some impact from the block, which will be set 17.5 metres. It will be visible from the garden area, and further up the garden, roughly in this area of the block, will be where set 17.5 metres back will be the proposed end and west elevation of the block 762. It is proposed that the openings in that block, which are secondary windows and non-habitable room windows, will be obscurely glazed up to a certain height. In terms of the reverse view, this is a view from the car parking area. So where we've seen, if you look at the bottom left-hand side of the picture there, and you can see the conifer on the right-hand side of the slide. If you flip that and look from the application site, as we did with members today, you've got that view there. So there would be significant trees retained in that area, and members who were there today saw, and we can see on plan, that the end elevation roughly lines up. If I just skim back, roughly lines up. I'll just show on here. The end of the block roughly lines up with the end property there, which is effectively a building that provides information technology or computer services for the university. So it's set back in approximately that location. So again, that was that slide. And again, separation distances. So it's appreciated that for block 762, there are similar issues to be considered. Though the tree cover is clearly less abundant in that area, it's noted that the block is orientated generally east to west and presents a narrower end elevation broadly to the rear of 5 and 7 Spinney Hill Drive, which are further across here, which is across from the garden area that we just looked from, which is number 15 Holywell Drive. The block, in combination with the less abundant tree cover and lower house types on Spinney Hill Drive, numbers 1, 3, 5 and 7, would be more exposed to external view, but in officers' opinion, not so prominent as to be visually overbearing. Access has been provided to the rear of 15 Holywell Drive, as set out earlier, and reference has been made in images in the presentation, or will be in a moment, to the west elevation of the proposed block. The proposal does not offend the relevant separation distances that we'd anticipate in the design SPD, and there's no direct relationship between the proposed block and the habitable room windows of number 15 Holywell Drive. It's also to be remembered that the design SPD is guidance, and it does set out within that guidance that the context of each proposal has to be carefully weighed and considered and taken into account as part of a planning judgment on any particular site. Along Holywell Drive, the houses and trees in their grounds provide strong screening and filtering of views, and that is as you go along Holywell Drive. We saw that on site today, and that's along the south elevation of block 762, and it's considered that the occasional sight of the high parts of the block would not be unduly intrusive. if I just show members the residential amenity slide, so there are separation distances there. I will update members that where the separation distance is shown to number 9, so I'll just highlight that on the plan. So in terms of the cursor here, there is a measurement there, and that's to the original rear wall of number 9. It's clear, as we saw on site and from the photographs we showed earlier when I mentioned the lanterns, that there is quite a significant extension to the rear of number 9. So that has to be taken into account clearly by members this evening. And the extension from the original rear wall is in the order of 8 metres. So where we've got a separation distance there from the facade, you'll see to the corner of the proposed block there, this line, I'm just running the cursor along. So that needs to be taken into account, that in terms of separation to the single story extension, that is in the order of 50 metres from that corner, as you'll see, through to the rear of number 9. And similarly, separation distances are shown of over 50 metres to the buildings I referenced earlier, the broad line of 135 and 7 Spinney Hill Drive. In terms of other issues, residential amenity, just to finish off, so block 761 and 762 are highlighted again, and I've annotated there 15 Hollywell Drive. This is a bit more detail, so as we've just seen on block 761, it'd effectively be this corner of the building if I just flick back. So in terms of that elevation is the one I'm going to show members, that sort of southwest elevation, and that shows you where roughly a direct line down that arrow hits the block. And if I just show you that end of that elevation, so members can appreciate that. So it's effectively that elevation. So there are bedrooms. This is a repeat of the first to the third floor, which is effectively a story up from the ground floor. So in old money, second to fourth floor. So clearly that edge of the building, and there are some bed spaces there. We have windows recessed within the elevation and the louvered panels on that corner of the building. In terms of block 762, so this is the one adjacent to 15 Hollywell Drive side boundary. We have 2 rows of windows, and it is proposed to condition the opening of those windows. I'll just show you the red lozenges that I've shown on the plan. Effectively, the left-hand one on the elevation is a secondary window into a kitchen area, and the other one is a non-habitable room. It's just the corridor, the circulation corridor in the block, and that again is proposed to be conditioned with regard to obscurity of the glazing. And that is also being mindful that there are no direct relationships between rear elevations of number 15 and the block, but is considered to be a reasonable request of the applicant and the development. And I've just included for members the typical arrangement of 2 types of room that are proposed. So the cluster bedroom, so it is proposed to be clustered accommodation, and the door into the clustered accommodation would then have an ensuite facility, shelving, bed space, and desk near the window. And there are also accessible rooms as well, which are slightly wider in terms of their sort of access and circulation requirements. So again, you come through a door, again, bed space and desk space as set out. So in terms of the issues, we've gone through those relatively in some detail this evening. In terms of principle of development. We set that out earlier in terms of the policy context within the campus and the environments of Loughborough. The layout, scale and design is openly contemporary and creates its own environment in terms of the concept design. Landscaping is proposed significantly to be retained and enhanced, and there is a landscaping condition to secure those proposed enhancements. In terms of heritage, we saw both the cottage and the listed walling, and it's on professional advice that there's no significant or harm to the significance of those assets. In terms of residential amenity, we've walked through that fairly carefully. There are various issues to consider, and we feel that the balance on those issues with the additional condition that's been proposed is appropriate in planning terms. And in terms of parking, highway safety and travel modes, it is planned to have a car-free development, and there is a limited amount of parking for deliveries, for servicing the development, and developer contributions. I've updated members this evening. We have had a late response from the Highway Authority, which seems to provide some latitude for a further discussion on the SIL compliance of the packages requested. But I will highlight to members that there are conditions proposed that would control or manage the delivery of the proposed travel plan. And with that in mind, Chair, I'm going to recommend clearly with the published report and the updates that there should be support in planning terms for the proposals this evening, and I will open it up. Leave it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. Right, we've got some speakers on this item, and the speakers are Mr. James Walters, who is an objector, the Loughborough University Concerned Residents Group. The next one is Mr. Tim Evans, who is the agent for Avison Young. And the third one is the ward councillor, Councillor Smidovics, who called this in. Can I ask Mr. Walters to come down and represent your residents? Are you okay with the speaker microphone? Councillor will let you know how to do it. Right, can I just remind you, Mr. Walters, that we are allowing you to speak for 3 minutes, and when there's 1 minute remaining, Ms. Dobson will remind you. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Professor James Walters, and I'm speaking on behalf of an action group comprising local residents. The group was initially formed to engage positively with the university over its plans for new student accommodation on campus. Unfortunately, the university did not engage directly with residents. The public consultation exercise was a token gesture, taking place only a few weeks before the application was submitted, with residents not even notified of its existence. The government's national planning policy framework makes clear that applicants should work closely with those affected by their proposals to evolve designs that take account of the views of the community, and that applications that can demonstrate early, proactive, and effective engagement with the community should be looked on more favourably than those that cannot. However, Loughborough University has submitted a scheme that completely ignores residents' profound concerns. Due to this failure, the application would cause significant long-term harm to the residential amenity of properties and to the character of the area. The proposed development will, 1, erect disproportionate, large-scale buildings directly adjacent to an established residential area, neither respecting nor enhancing the character of that area and failing to protect the residential amenity of neighbouring properties. 2, locate this development too close to private residential properties by relying on inappropriate or inaccurate separation distances for buildings of this scale. 3, rely on deciduous trees without protection orders and even other residential properties to reduce the visual impact of these large-scale buildings. 4, create long-term high levels of noise, traffic, and parking infringements. We consider the council assessment of this application to be wholly inadequate, as per our letter of 13th of October 2025, as the application conflicts with adopted and emerging local plan policies CS2, EV/1 and DS5. We support and value Loughborough University, but with more than 523 acres at its disposal, it has several options that will not be nearly so harmful to the local community. Instead, the university is seeking to force through the quickest and cheapest option, ignoring the damage it will cause. Many people expect the committee to just wave this application through, but this committee can stand up for its community and reject a proposal that fails to accord with adopted and emerging planning policies and would have such a negative long-term impact. The scale, mass, height and proximity of this proposed development is simply too much. Approving it would open the door to future proposals, causing equivalent or greater harm. We respectfully call on the committee to reject this application.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Our next speaker is Mr. Tim Evans of Avison Young. Mr. Evans, are you familiar with the equipment with which to speak? All right, Councillor Lowe. You have 3 minutes in which to speak. At the end, when you've only got 1 minute remaining, Ms. Dobson will let you know.
Fine, thanks. Good evening, I'm Tim Evans, Director and Head of the Midlands Planning Team at Avison Young. I'm here to speak in strong support of Loughborough University's planning application for a new student accommodation scheme on the land east and west of Margaret Key Road within the university campus. I'm joined by representatives from the university this evening. This proposal is not just about the provision of new student accommodation, it's about securing the future of the university, supporting the town and ensuring students have access to high quality, well-managed accommodation on the university campus. Loughborough University is the town's largest employer and a top UK university. It supports over 17,000 students and employs more than 3,500 staff, alongside a growing science park, which currently houses a further 3,000 people. The university has 6,300 student bed spaces, but many of the 60s and 70s stock needs to be replaced. Without additional on-campus accommodation, more students will be forced to live in the town, increasing pressure on local housing, parking and services. This development will provide 552 new bed spaces, and it's an essential step in keeping students on campus where they're best supported and integrated into university life. It will help reduce the number of students living in residential areas, in HMOs, and reduce the need for private sector purpose-built student accommodation schemes in the town. Just as importantly, this scheme is vital to the university's financial sustainability. The revenue generated from these additional beds will help fund core academic and student services, ensuring the university remains competitive and continues to deliver world-class education and research. In a challenging financial climate for higher education, this kind of investment is not optional, it's absolutely essential to avoid further pressure on the university's cost base and jobs. The university has worked closely with council officers and its consultant team to ensure this proposal is well designed and fully complies with relevant adopted and emerging local planning policies. It's an inward-facing scheme with outdoor social spaces situated in the centre of development, surrounded by extensive landscaping. The university acknowledges the concern of local residents, and it's taken every reasonable step to address them through careful design and mitigation. In short, the issues raised have been fully considered and should not prevent this important development from moving forward. The officer's report confirms that the scheme meets planning policy at all levels and no statutory consultees have raised objections. In conclusion, this is a well-considered, policy-compliant proposal that delivers clear benefits to the university, the town and the wider community. I respectfully urge the committee to approve the application and support the continued success and financial sustainability of the university. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Evans. Our final speaker today is Ward Councillor Smidovics. Are you familiar with how to use the equipment? No. You've got your 3 minutes, Margaret, so whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Loughborough University campus covers 523 acres. 523 acres is the largest in the UK. The site was one of 2 finally selected because of convenience, cost and speed was the university priority, and it sits at the highest point of the university's site. The proposed location could not have been put in a worse place for maximising the negative impact on the largest number of residents. We support campus accommodation in principle and no evidence whatsoever that another PBSA will release student HMOs. There are at least 7 material considerations that have been glossed over and far too many maybes on specific issues. The unsympathetic design and residents' amenity has been ignored, and 2 separation measurements on the plans were incorrect by nearly 9 metres. The blocks dominate and do not respect residents' privacy. A few trees will not hide the height, noise or light pollution from 28 plus windows. The noise will worsen at weekends. There is no justification to remove what is left of the heritage or the shortfall in biodiversity. Why are there no design visuals of the blocks from the street scene? Imagine Ormbury Gap size properties. Charnwood Community Safety highlight the additional pressures on parking. Policy 8 on page 35 makes the point that the car-free approach provides a welcoming pedestrian experience. This statement refers to pedestrians on campus, but please look at 19, 20, 24, 25 and 27 of your report on street parking. The university ordinance relating to traffic and parking clearly states that students must register their vehicles, even if they do not bring them onto campus. And failure to register may lead to penalties. Residents lobbied for years for deterrence. A no-car policy exists for the first year PBSA at the university, but the liaison group have been told students need their cars as some of them work. Are we to assume that students that live in the 17 purpose-built student accommodation blocks around the town do not have to work? We need 106 contributions for additional security and nose and control, smoke and mirrors.
Thank you to our speakers. I'd like to ask Mr Upton, the Planning Officer, if they wish to respond to any of the points raised by the speakers.
I think the one I've already referenced, and it's clear, one of the separation distances was referenced earlier. I just want to clarify that again. I will, thank you. In terms of the published report, we have actually set out the discrepancy from the 59 metre line that was to the rear, the original rear elevation of number 9, and we have set out that that is approximately 50 metres. We've also set out for members, Chair, the relevant distances elsewhere in the report. The concerns that have been raised are appreciated in terms of amenity, but we have looked at that issue very carefully, and a combination of separation distances and the retention and enhancement of landscaping is a clear shared concern and has been addressed by those issues, as well as the concerns raised with the west elevation of the most southerly block 762, hence the proposed condition of obscure glazing on the limited openings in that west elevation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Upton. The committee will now consider the application as presented by the planning officer. If you would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand to indicate. Councillor Infield.
Thank you, Chair. So it's clear that the visual impact is a critical issue here. I did join the walk around this afternoon, and we were taken to a number of gardens that would be impacted by the development. But it was difficult standing in those gardens to actually get a good appreciation of how visible the building structures would be. We did ask, but we didn't have a clear answer there. And I'm wondering why the case to support this has not been supported by photomontages, as often is the case when significant visual intrusion takes place. So recent private development near the leisure centre, we did see detailed photomontages which helped us assess the extent to which that development was overbearing. So I wonder if it could be explained why we're not seeing them today. Thank you.
Mr Upton.
Yes, Chair, through you. Yes, it's clear that the application submissions and the representations that were received from the local community both contained images. The application, the submissions contained views that weren't verified views, and similarly the submissions through representations showed various blocks of development, and in terms of showing that to be representative, it was felt that, you know, to be even-handed, we would look at separation distances and guidance and provide members with a fairly fulsome suite of documents in terms of landscaping and proposed elevations, and where the blocks sat, to make an appropriate planning assessment in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any more comments, Mr Infield?
Well, I've listened to what was said, but I'm not sure that it would have imbalanced the assessment to have seen these images.
Do you wish to respond?
Through you, Chair, I can clearly show members when we were on site today. So we showed the topography and the levels. There is significant landscaping, as we showed. So in terms of the landscaping and the retention of the groups, we saw, and as we pointed out, the canopy of the groups we retained to the western side. is approximately 16 metres in height, and the trees elsewhere in the southwest corner were up to 12 metres in height, and the location of the blocks is shown there. The separation distances were shown on the plans, and I can show members that again if you wish. It should be good. There we go. So a combination of the landscape features and separation distances in terms of the planning assessment give, in terms of the amenity impacts, give a fair steer on those amenity impacts when we consider them against guidance. We have caveated things both in my presentation this evening and in the report that the context of each proposal does have to be considered, and that the guidance provided is not always precisely for this relationship in terms of student accommodation with existing residential accommodation. So we have taken it as a barometer in terms of the guidance, and clearly from those separation distances, we feel that the proposal can be appropriately assessed, and taking that together with the guidance is an appropriate way of dealing with the planning assessment, rather than getting into unverified views, whether that be from the applicant or clearly concerned residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Infield? Councillor Good.
So on page 14, it mentions that there's spaces in car park 1, and getting rid of car park 5, people would move into car park 1 instead. We all know that parking on campus is scarce anyway, so doesn't this suggest that car park 1 is in the wrong place and these people won't park in there anyway? And the impact will go on the street.
Mr Upton, do you wish to come back?
Clearly, the car parking management, there is capacity there within the campus. We haven't got any, as we sit here at the moment, any concerns raised by the Highway Authority regarding any issues relating to this proposal, other than clearly we've raised the issue mentioned earlier in presentation regarding contributions. There's clearly capacity there, and the Highway Authority will have considered in making their views the highway merits of the proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have any further comment to make, Councillor Good?
It seems like the numbers are there, but the practicalities might not, particularly anybody who's rushing to work in the morning after doing a school run drop-off, or anybody in the locality. It seems like the numbers are there, but possibly not in the right place.
Thank you. Councillor Snart.
Madam Chairman, thank you. If I can just go through a couple of bits, if I may. If I turn to Charnwood Conservation and Urban Design, and the design bit of that on page 16, part of that says, and will result in a development of similar height when viewed as part of the wider built form. And going around today, and when I was in the residential area, that doesn't seem to fit. Could you just explain that?
Mr Upton.
Yes, Chair. In terms of the wider built form, clearly those are the comments from the Conservation Urban Design Officer. I haven't quite got the page reference again, Councillor.
On the design bit.
Yep.
About halfway down the
So is that the layout section or the? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the wider built form will show where we were today, councillor. So as we walked through, and there was a variation in height of buildings, so it's taking into account the wider environment. So looking at the wider campus building, so we saw that there was a difference in height of around 8 to 9 metres across the site, and clearly with that height difference, there would be a similarity with other buildings in the wider estate in that area of the site. I don't think the I don't think the cross section's quite. Yeah.
Can we please have less interruption? It's okay if you can't hear, but if you're going to make insults at the same time, that's not helpful.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it is that wider estate. I haven't quite got a capture of it on the slides this evening, I don't think, but as we've seen, there were buildings at slightly higher levels. We went past the Digi block, the Digi Lab, sorry. You got the Edward Herbert building clearly set up on that higher level. And then, as we saw previously, there were higher buildings there with the chemistry block. And then there are higher buildings in the wider estate. So effectively, I think that's where the design and conservation officer's comments come from. Thank you, Chair. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
I think
Sorry, Councillor Snart. I must ask that people in the public gallery remain silent while members and officers are trying to make a decision by asking questions and making comments, because if we don't hear that, if we're being shouted over, we can't reach a proper decision as independent members. Thank you. Councillor Snart.
So if I can go back through you, Madam Chairman, well, am I understanding right then that the design was actually to do with the actual university and not the wider form in terms of the residential area? Is that what we're saying?
Mr. Upton.
I think there's a dichotomy, certainly in terms of the character of the wider university campus. But again, in terms of scale, we've mentioned in terms of an additional story, if you like, when we were talking about building 761 earlier, in terms of its relationship to neighbours. And yes, the character in terms of what the buildings are relating to is more akin to the university environment, but similarly, the design is considered to be appropriate given the separation and the landscaping details that we've been through earlier. Thank you, Chair. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Could I just go on? If I turn to page 40 now, this is 965. When we talk about that the distance provided are not the only consideration to be taken into account, so we understand the weight that we can put towards this in recommending the nature and the residents have used the separation distances. Could we just get an idea of what those other considerations are, so I can actually have to weigh that up?
Mr. Upton.
Yes, Chair, very good, and thank you for the question. The SPD was primarily based at fairly settled and common residential development in terms of houses. In terms of the relationships as well between relevant properties, that was more akin to having that back-to-back relationship. So when we talk about distances, you could have an open relationship over a standard boundary fence, and those separation distances would be appropriate in that context. As we saw today, there are various features on that site, and I'll go back to the slide in a moment, show a bit more detail about the relationships that are evident around the western and southwestern boundaries of the site, which are clearly the most sensitive areas, and we do appreciate that. In terms of those relationships, we can see there are groups of trees which are proposed to be retained down that western and more sensitive area of the site. And in terms of, if I can get to the right point, so again, there are proposed plantings, as I mentioned earlier, in that southwest corner. If I can get to the right point. The separation distances. So the concern, the separation there is showing to number 9. If I can just take members along that line very briefly, if you see where the point hits obviously the join between number 9 and its neighbour to the north is along that more or less approximates to where that line is. If you look at the trees, and we can look at those again in a moment, it is quite a significant canopy of mature trees, approximately 16 metres in height, as per the submitted arboricultural information. Now, having explained that those standard distances, one, are to do with a traditional back-to-back relationship between residential properties, and that could be an open field view between two properties with a standard fence. Here we have a separation distance in the order of 50 metres, so nearly twice the separation distance one would expect. And we also have a mature tree screen, which we've shown in photographs, and I'll flick back to those in a moment, that for many months of the year is in full leaf, and appreciate, and that's why we wanted to show this evening that there are several months where it is with no leaf, because they are deciduous trees, which has been pointed out. But I also, in terms of context, would just reference to members the serious concerns there from number 9. But in terms of the majority of the windows in that elevation, the direct relationship of those windows over the Lags Garden, which is a considerable distance, plus the tree screen before you get to the amenity space, and then the rear elevation of the properties. Most of those windows are actually further north in terms of that direct relationship. And the contextual piece, which I've hopefully set out and explained, is that there are lots of features here, as well as the distance, those natural landscape features that mean that we conclude that it's appropriate in terms of the guidance that we have and the site context in this particular case. Hopefully that explains, Chair.
Just going on, if I may, we don't seem to have had too much information about the separation distances between the actual blocks. Do they actually conform?
Clearly that's been if I can just get to the right slide. Yeah, clearly the main separations are shown there in terms of the blocks. So we've got 20 metres here between opposing windows and 32.5 metres here between them. So that hasn't been picked up as a concern in terms of that new development and establishing a new relationship in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Snott, do you have any more?
There's one final one, and it's on page 41, which is about the trees. And we see it here about so much about the trees making a valuable positive contribution. I know that it's understood, and I spoke this afternoon about it, about TPOs. Wouldn't it be right to actually put TPOs on those trees?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a very good question. In terms of, and it has been carefully considered, the tree officer has looked at the site, and in terms of I mentioned it in my presentation earlier, in terms of tree retention and consideration of those trees, a lot of the trees that are both category B and category C, the category B trees have got a life expectancy of at least 20, and with a time horizon of 20 to 40 years, so medium to long term retention and lifespan. And in terms of practice, when you look at law regarding the expediency of protecting trees, it's not considered in this case that, given the applicant and the professional advice that we've had, it wouldn't be expedient, we don't believe, in this case, to suggest or recommend a tree preservation order. That comes from good practice and government guidance, and it's unlikely to be expedient to make a TPO where trees are under good arboricultural management, and that is definitely the case in that professional assessment in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Snart. I've got Councillor Seaton next.
Thank you, Chair. But that was going to be my point on the TPOs. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer, did you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It seems like a great idea to have on-campus accommodation for students, but this just seems rather, it seems like it needs to be scaled back quite a lot. And it seems to be block 761 and 762 that are causing the problem, or most of the problem. And if that could just go, and then maybe that could be for car parking, I don't know, would that solve a few problems?
Mr. Upton.
Well, I'm not sure that was a question for me, but I will take it, Chair. Clearly, we've carefully considered the design, and I'm not going to labour the points again, but we have considered what we have in front of us this evening, because that's what we have to do as a planning authority. And having carefully considered that and the significant local concerns, we have looked at it very carefully. And the balance is that we should support the proposal. There are similar, issues. We do have to consider the proposal in front of us, and we do think it's reasonable and meets the relevant policy tests. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any more comments, Councillor Palmer?
Just one. I just think if the university had had a genuine consultation with the residents, maybe this problem wouldn't have arisen. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Excuse me. I was on the site visit this afternoon, and we did go round quite a lot of the way. I do find it a little bit difficult because I am looking at my pictures here I've got. Just for clarification, I understand the Graham Oldham building is already demolished, and that covers block 763. The chemistry building is to be demolished, or has been already demolished, and that covers 765 and 764. Now, the other part for 761 and 762, that is an existing car park at the moment, and that will be those two. They could, just out of interest, to get an idea of the scale of things, because there are different size buildings all over the campus, from 1 or 2 story to really, really tall stories. Blocks, the 2 buildings that have been demolished, do we have any idea how tall they were in reference to floors? Not just tell me it's 100 meters or something, or 100 feet, but if it would be the equivalent to 4 floors, 6 floors, or 8 floors, that might be helpful, because where we are at the moment, the car park is on the highest level, but as you walk down, you're going down to what was the Graham Oldham building and the chemistry building, as far as I can see. And it does seem to me, I think someone's mentioned it is 761 and 762 that are of concern. But I would like to know if anybody has an idea of the heights of the buildings that have been demolished. Thank you very much.
Mr Upton, do you have that information?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I suppose it's just going back to the. I'll answer the question very quickly. I don't have full information, but hopefully the photos will tell the story. So again, looking at the topography of the site, if we look in the southwest, southern western corner, it's around the 69 metre level in terms of the level of the land, and that dips down some 9 metres approximately down to the other sort of northeastern end of the site. The first building you mentioned is near the Digilab, and the second building, the chemistry building, was on that lowest level. If I just go and see if I've got some assistance from the photographs, I know the chemistry building was, I'm probably going the wrong way now, aren't I? Yes, thank you. So the chemistry building is the 5-story building that you can see in the left-hand side of the left-hand photograph at the top, and in the middle distance on the right-hand side of the slide. So that's a 5-story building, and somebody, I'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks as though the other building, the Graham Oldham building, was 2 stories, but I can't quite tell from that photograph whether it had an undercroft and went down further. It looks like that was a 2-story building. So yeah, and that's the site today, as we saw on site with the both buildings cleared. Clearly, the design concept for the site is to appreciate at those lower levels in the site that there would be a 6-story building rather than the 4 that's proposed on the western edge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fryer, do you have any more comments? Councillor Good. Councillor Good, can you put your mic on?
Sorry, can I ask for some clarification on page 31? It's just a couple of bits. It mentions about it being an academic zone and things can only be no higher than 3 stories. Is that not the case anymore? And also about the covenants for restricting properties in the Burley Hall building estate. Is that all okay and legal? Please.
Mr Upton.
With pleasure, Chair. Yes, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, the reference to the academic zone is from a supplementary planning document that is referenced in the representations on the application. That SPD is still current, but it doesn't relate to the area that we're considering tonight. That area is further to the east of what we're proposing. I'm trying to get a visual on it, but it is further across the site towards Epinal Way. So it's not actually impacted those references to this particular site. The wording, the policy that SPD hangs off is still current. And as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, we can only give that moderate weight, but we still feel that the development complies with that policy. There's no specific reference in that policy to 3 stories. That reference is from the SPD, which doesn't relate to this application site. It's further to the east in the campus, a part of the campus that goes out towards Epinal Way. And sorry, the other question, about the covenant. I'll let my esteemed colleague step in as needs be, but we're looking at the planning merits of the proposal this evening. If there's a legal point in terms of some restriction in title, that will be considered out with the planning process. We're just considering the planning process this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I've seen the reference. There are covenants in place to restrict properties of the previous Burley Hall building estate, which all of these areas fall into. Restrictive covenants are actually a property law matter, and as a consequence are not a material consideration for a planning application. So they're not actually material, and we can't take them into consideration.
Thank you, Mr Evans and Mr Upton. Councillor Good, do you have any further questions or comments?
Can I just confirm that all of the lag site is going to stay intact? Because it was a bit confusing where the line was on the map, please.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
Councillor Good, can you have another go?
Can I confirm that all of the lags at the Loughborough Amateur Gardening Society, does all the site stay, not just the trees, but the site as well, please?
Yes, Chair, if I just go back to the slides. If you see there, the lags area is outside the application site, generally in that area there. So it's not impacted by the proposals. It is, as I'm aware, proposed that relationship carries on, but it is outside the application site, but it's not part of the proposals this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk about an issue that hasn't been mentioned yet, but is very clearly outlined in the letters of objection, and that relates to noise and noise disturbance and perceived likely noise disturbance. And with 552 bed spaces, this does sound like a legitimate concern to me. It seems to be sufficiently legitimate that the university is prepared to accept a condition to secure lock the Spinney Hill entrance between 9 and 6. So obviously, the university obviously thinks that this could be an issue. And I'm just wondering to what extent there's been any sort of consideration of noise assessment. We do know that antisocial behaviour and so on has been a real issue in Loughborough. And I'm just wondering to what extent there's a consideration of this to ensure that good relations continue between the university and the community.
Mr Upton, do you have any comeback for that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, in terms of the consideration of noise issues, it is an issue that's referenced and carefully considered through the report. The Environmental Health Officer has given their professional input into the consideration of the item this evening. In terms of the their response, it is set out within the papers this evening. So that includes acoustic planning reports, the noise, or their views on the acoustic planning reports, the noise limits for external plant facade, performance assessments, and also consideration of external amenity areas and the hall management plan. And in terms of the conditions that are recommended this evening, we have looked very carefully at that. There's been reference to the closure of the gates and the management of that. There's been reference to having wardens on the site. And in terms of the conditions proposed, if we just go to the back of the agenda pack, there is reference to the studies that are hereby approved. So that is the noise impact assessment that was submitted dated 18th of June. That's in condition 2. And the recommendations of the report submitted with the application in condition 6. We are saying that the development needs to be carried out in accordance with those recommendations, and you'll see that noise impact assessment is referenced there. With regard to the matters from the management plan that we looked at very carefully, the condition 17 listed this evening does seek details of the means to ensure the closure of the gate onto Spinney Hill Drive between certain hours, prevents pedestrian access, and that is to reduce the likelihood of noise and disturbance arising from the access during hours when other sources of noise would have subsided. And there's also reference to the need for security on the site within the proposed condition set. So we have picked out 2 conditions which we feel are reasonable and defensible, or 2 areas in terms of the hall management plan, and that relates to 24-hour, 7-day-a-week security and bin servicing, so refuse servicing. And so yes, noise has been carefully considered both by officers and the environmental health officer, and the recommendation this evening takes that into account. Thank you, Chair.
Is that all, Councillor Baines?
Yeah, I think so.
May I ask Mr. Upton, when I was reading through the details about closing off access from Spinney Hill Road, it seemed to be that there was new gates proposed, not just the barrier that goes up and down at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair, through you, there are proposals within the conditions to do a couple of things. So there is proposed to be a parking management plan under condition 13, and that's to ensure adequate off-street provision is made to reduce the possibility of the development leading to on-street issues, and also encouraging sustainable travel mode. And there's also a detail required, for which the condition I'll get to in a moment. Thank you, Caroline. So condition 17 is the one, yes, just over leaf. So details of the means to ensure the closure of the gate to Spinney Hill Drive, and that's been amended through the extras report because there's a slight requirement just before 600 hours for staff access at 5:45, and we feel that's reasonable to accede to that request. And that detail is to be provided in such a manner as to prevent pedestrian access to the site and the receipt of deliveries between those hours. And that's got to be, that scheme and details have got to be submitted to and approved to us as a local planning authority prior to first occupation of the development. and they would need to be installed beforehand. So, yeah, it can't confirm the precise nature of those details yet, but it would be a fairly secure arrangement, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baines.
Sorry, Chair, I do want to come back. I'm just wondering under what circumstances we'd expect to see something like acoustic fencing or a soundproof cladding on buildings in order to mitigate noise pollution, and whether this meets that or not. I'd be interested in that.
Mr Upton, do you have any information on that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, there has been clearly a noise impact assessment that's been carefully considered in terms of both the existing environment, which, as we've seen today from the information we've presented, is an open surface car park, which is extensively accessible. So the noise impact assessment has carefully considered that and the proposed use. And as I say, the Environmental Health Officer has looked at that and suggested an appropriate approach, which includes the conditions I've just mentioned, and it does also reference, the materials that are proposed as part of the building work, or at least the openings in the buildings, and the appropriate percentage, I believe, within relevant facades. Thank you, Chair. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Baines? Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions? Oh, Councillor Bowcar.
Thank you. Just going back to displaced parking in and around the university, this obviously is going to bring 552 new students who apparently are not allowed to park on campus. And they sign a declaration to that effect, but we all know that they break it. So what measures are going to be put in place to really ensure that these displaced cars are not put in residential roads in the area? Because I'm sure that's one of the residents' concerns.
Mr Upton, do you have any information?
In terms of the issues relating to the site, the displacement of parking is clearly a consideration. We've heard reference to it this evening in terms of the arrangements that the applicant has with students in terms of not having cars. Clearly, it's not something that's easily within the gift of planning conditions or relevance to this particular proposal. The Highway Authority have looked at it very carefully, and it's not something that we can reasonably condition or enforceably look at that aspect. In terms of the licence and controls that the applicant has, that is something that they can reasonably take forward, but it's not something this evening that we could sensibly recommend any conditions in planning terms. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bowker.
Thank you to the officer. I'm not very happy with the response, but I don't think the residents will be as either. On another area, I do feel, having read everything, especially on page 42, that indicates that a visual, I think it was 42, the visual amenity, sorry, it's 40. The visual amenity and the impact on residential amenity comes under both CS2 and DS5. And under DS5 paragraph, it definitely says the policy can be given significant weight in the assessment of this application. And I do think that anybody can see that the visual amenity by 761 and 762 is going to be quite impactful on 1, 3 and 7 and 15, especially during the winter months when there's no leaves on the tree. And I'm not sure that it has been given significant weight in the assessment of this application. And consequently, together with the limited engagement with the residents, I do feel that this application has not been progressed in the correct manner. And yes, I understand that we have to have more accommodation on the campus, but at the end of the day, we should and ought to give residential concerns the highest, including the noise that is possible. We should give the residents the highest accommodation of their concerns, rather than, as we know, just saying that car parking from car park 5 is going to be demolished, so to speak, and highways have concluded that they can all go to car park number 1. Well, whenever I go to the campus for a minute, it's really, really, really hard to find a parking space anywhere. And car park 5 is completely displaced from car park 1, which is at the front entrance. So I think the residents' concerns are very relevant, and I'm worried that we will put this through and have not actually taken account of their concerns to the highest possible, degree.
Thank you, Councillor Boker. Do you have any comments you wish to make, Mr Upton?
I think I'd be at pains to repeat myself if I did. So no, there's nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions or comments to make? Councillor Boker.
Just one last one. The only way that you could reject this application is to utilise policies CS2 and DS5. That's just my comment to the rest of the committee.
Are you making a proposal?
No, I just said it's advice to the rest of the committee.
Thank you. Does anyone have any further comments or a proposal to make? Councillor Seaton.
Right. We seem to be at that juncture at the moment. And we are all here to make a decision, and a decision we should be making. So people are putting arguments for the trees, deciduous or not, the noise abatement, all of these have been answered. The separation distances, it's all been answered. I do agree with the comments that we should have had a visualisation, whether it would be impactful on certain views at the bottom of people's gardens. But the separation distances have been adhered to as per planning law. And unless somebody can come up with some, or wants to propose a reason to reject this application, I can't see that coming forward. So With that in mind, I'm going to propose that we go with officer's recommendation to accept this development. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fryer, do you wish to make a comment?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. I think we've looked at this very, very carefully, and I am sure the developer has taken on a lot of our concerns. I think at the moment, looking at it, if we were just looking at the other building sites, not 761 and 762, I don't think there would be so many concerns. But we are looking at it as a whole, and I tend to agree with my fellow councillor that we have no planning grounds to refuse this application. Therefore, I second, subject to all the conditions being met. I would like, if possible, an informative note to be added to the conditions for the developer to look again at the possible screening and ensure that everything is done as possible in, with the soundproofing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Mr Upton, are we able to make that part of the... Well, I know there are conditions anyway, but
yeah.
Can we strengthen that in our wording?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor. So, yeah, in terms of informative notes that have been suggested, they aren't conditions of planning permission. With regard to the two issues, we have got two conditions that control noise issues listed in the plans, condition 2 and the condition that relates to implementing the recommendations of the noise assessment. So I don't think we can do anything more reasonably with informatives, but that is for members to take a view on. And similarly, with the other matter, which has slipped my mind, apologies, the other informative that was suggested. Screening, yes. Again, a landscape scheme is proposed. So in terms of screening, we could frame some wording around an informative, but clearly the condition is there to make sure that appropriate. The reason for that condition is to make sure the scheme is appropriate. In fact, I've got it in front of me here. To ensure a satisfactory landscaping scheme for the development is provided so that it integrates into the landscape and is completed to help stimulate development into its surroundings, which includes its residential neighbours. So I think, again, it's for committee and members to determine. I think the reason in the condition probably gives testament to the concerns that you're raising, Councillor Fryer. So in terms of that, just going back to recommendation, I know Councillor Seaton, you want to come in. So I suppose it's just going back to the earlier part of the presentation, which reported on the outstanding matter and the ongoing dialogue and latitude that I think there is in the SIL contribution requested. So it's the recommendation this evening has been amended to, in accordance with the published report as amended by the provisions of the extras report, and a delegation to officers to consider the matter of SIL compliance for the highways requested contributions, and for that to be delegated to officers in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Seaton.
Thank you. My original comment was going to be about the TPO trees. So could I just, as the proposer, could I just go back to the visual slide of one of the rear gardens? Yes, it's really the ownership of those trees. Whose ownership were not those trees. You've got another slide. Yes, I suppose. Who is the owner of the majority of those trees that we are holding so much? They are screened. We need to know who's the ownership of them. If it's in the university, then it is governed by or I can never say the right word. It's the people who look after trees on the university, on the campus. But obviously, if it's in a person's garden and they haven't got a TPO, then they can be cut down. Whether they are 40 years old or 20 years old is, to me, irrelevant. I think if we are putting that much store on them, being the effective screening, that we should be able to put TPOs on them. And I would like that to be a condition, but I would leave it with the planners to decide which one should be TPO'd, because some of the trees aren't going to be 40 years old and important to the screening. Does this make sense?
Perfectly. Sorry, Chair, is that okay if I respond? Sorry, I do apologise, I'm getting a bit with the red button. So in terms of the protection of the trees, we referenced earlier, if I just go back to the slide that shows ownership. So there, so we can see in the bottom, and this shows it quite succinctly, the yellow orange areas of amenity space associated with the residential properties adjoining the boundary, adjoining the application boundary in that area. So the slide that we were just looking at from within the site showed trees within the application site, so they're within the applicant's control. The retention plans that we've shown are very extensive. If I can get to those, are there. So all the black trees there are proposed to be retained, and this shows the submission to date of what's proposed to be additional planting, and you'll see there are groups around all over in terms of different areas where new trees are proposed, and there are proposals along the southern boundary, and then more of a group of trees proposed where we're just looking towards that boundary to the southwest corner. So given both the retention of existing landscaping as shown there and the proposals that have been submitted to date, which are also to be supplemented by the submission of details through the soft landscaping scheme as proposed this evening, we don't feel there's a reasonable requirement to go any further than that at this stage. With regard to tree preservation order, the tree officer has confirmed that in his professional view, and given the arboricultural management, I just about got that word out, and I haven't mentioned silviculture yet, but in terms of arboricultural management, that it wouldn't be expedient, given the relevant guidance on seeking tree preservation orders, to seek a tree preservation order in this case. So that's based on both the applicant and the management of their estate and the retention and proposals that we see this evening, which would be further controlled by the soft landscaping condition. Thank you, Chair. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with that. I was just concerned that they were in other ownerships and they're not. So thank you very much.
Councillor Palmer, I saw you wanted to speak. We have had is it to do with the proposal or the seconder?
Thank you. I have an alternative proposal. Okay. Is it possible that we could defer a decision on this and ask the applicant to go back and have a look at their plans, given the concerns of the residents and councillors here about block 761 and 762, whether they could not go ahead with that part of the plan? Would that be acceptable to members?
I think we better ask Mr Upton whether that's up for grabs, because I believe that we are to make a decision on what's in front of us, and I doubt that deferral will be an option.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not Mr Upton, just in case anyone was confused. Yeah, members need to make a decision on the application that is before them tonight. If you were to vote to defer, there's a likelihood that we would get an appeal against non-determination of the application. So my recommendation would be to vote on what's before you this evening.
So we have a proposal to go with officer's recommendation, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
All those against.
1, 2, 4 against.
I'll make that 12. Any abstentions? All right, there we go. So the vote is for us to go ahead with officer's recommendation, I think. I confirm the vote is... Oh, you do.
Then you can confirm it. The vote is 8-4, 4 against and 1 abstention. Chair.
I also confirm those numbers, thank you. That's not the end, everybody.
Do you want to wait until public comment?
Yeah. Okay, councillors, members of our planning committee. We now go to item 6 on the agenda, which is the list of applications determined under delegated powers, which is page 64 to 79 in your agenda. Yes, the excitement's not over. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments to make? Okay. Item 7 is the quarterly enforcement decisions report, which is on page 80 to 82 of the agenda. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments? If there are no questions or comments, I will close the meeting. Thank you all. Been a difficult decision to make.